It's up to you. Go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education meeting for Monday, January 29th to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Been moved by Board Member Adams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Schwartz. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Come on, all these people and nobody's going to say anything? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Best of the Best. Best of the Best awards are designed to recognize those students or staff that go above and beyond in their day-to-day activities. They truly are exemplary in every way. The winners will receive a limestone plaque as well as a gift certificate from local businesses, and the winners have been nominated by their peers. Our student Best of the Best award winner this month is Carter Worth, and Carter was nominated by Mrs. Sheevy, and I believe she is here to say a few words.
Good evening. I would like to introduce you to Carter Worth. And he was nominated, actually the Wilson Role Model sponsors and myself were visiting about Carter and felt like he was the perfect example of what Best of the Best truly entails. Carter is a role model. Our role models, one of their many duties is to meet and greet students at the beginning of school and assist them to get where they need to be, whether it's to the classroom or outside the classroom, depending on what time it is. Carter took that duty very seriously, and at the very beginning of the school year, he noticed that one of our new kindergarten students was really struggling to detach from his mom, and Carter got down on his level, spoke to him, kind of developed a relationship, offered to walk him down to the classroom. But not only did he do that one day, but the next day when the student was struggling, he did the same thing, and they kind of formed a bond, and for a month, at least a month, Carter walked that kindergarten student to his class, provided some reassurance, just gave him some comfort, and helped him transition from mom to kindergarten, and now that is no longer needed, we've moved away from that, but Carter helped make that transition very smooth for that kindergarten student, and he did that all on his own. So I really felt like Carter took a little extra time to care about one of our students and showed what it meant to be a role model, a true role model, and a good citizen of Wilson, caring, concerned, and connected to others. And we really appreciate that about Carter Worth. So congrats to someone very deserving.
And our staff Best of the Best award winner this month is Elaine Rolleder. And Elaine was nominated by Monica Dreiling, and I believe Monica is here to share a few words as well.
Good evening. Marielle and I would like to read the nomination form for Mrs. Rolleder, and then I believe there are some other staff members that maybe want to say a few words also. So Elaine Rolleder is an exemplary administrator. When teachers want to implement new projects and ideas within their classrooms, she is supportive and provides resources when necessary. Elaine's demeanor encourages staff and students to do their best each day. Guidance is provided in a caring, supportive manner. Elaine takes the time to get to know each student and their families. She understands the importance of making these connections with students, families, and staff, resulting in excellent rapport. She is genuinely interested in building relationships.
Mrs. Rolleder has an open-door policy and is willing to hear concerns and successes whenever she has a free moment. She is visible throughout the building to students and staff. She gives authentic praise, demonstrates extreme patience, and has high expectations. Mrs. Rolleder understands the unique challenges of working in education and provides support in meeting these challenges.
Good evening. I am a teacher at Lincoln Elementary, and it is a privilege to be a part of her staff. I appreciate all the support that I receive each and every day in doing my job at Lincoln with the students, and she is very deserving of this award.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you to my staff. I am so blessed to be a part of USD 489, but especially a part of Lincoln Elementary School. The staff there is so dedicated, not only to our students, but to their families. But, I want to say one thing, is being a part of it 489 has been a blessing for 24 years. And, I think the community needs to realize how fortunate their children are that they come to school each and every day and attend a school in USD 489, because everybody, from the classified staff, the certified staff, to the administration, their heart and soul is there every single day, and they're giving their very best for the kids of the community to make sure that they're great citizens and will continue to serve on boards like you guys do. So thank you for the opportunity to be a part of 489. Thank you.
Thanks again to our sponsors, the Hayes Tiger Inn and Gellas, and once again, congratulations to Carter and Elaine. Next item on the agenda is communications from other organizations. Looks like we have the Early Childhood Connections, priority grids, as well as the annual report. John, do you have anything to add to those?
No.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is school spotlights. John?
We do have a few spotlights I'd like to end up sharing. We ended up having, and I really wanted to get over and see this. It seems like it was really quite an event for the students who was able to be at Lincoln and Wilson Elementary School on January 18th. They were able to have a visit by Casey Wolf, greeted the students at each of the schools. He entered the gymnasiums. They ended up seeing a short video of Casey's tricks that he has completed over his 28 years as the Kansas City Chiefs mascot. And see, I learned things too. I had no idea that mascot was the same over 28 years, same fella. And I got to see the video, and the video was just amazing as far as what he very maybe most of those were early in on the 28 years because they were pretty athletic. Maybe he can do it now, but boy, that was amazing. He shared important message with students about bullying and how it affects them. Students learned how to identify when someone's being bullied and what to do to help address and stop the behavior. Really, USD 489 gives thanks to Casey Wolf and the Chiefs for helping to share that important lesson. It was very, very timely, very good message for those two elementary schools. We ended up having Hayes High School DECA students. They participated in money, in collecting money for the Ronald McDonald Houses Miracle Minutes project. DECA students do a wonderful job with that. They took advantage of crowds at the Bob Kuhn Prairie Classic. They collected spare change from spectators during the wrestling tournament. All the money raised for the Miracle Minute project will go toward helping children with significant medical needs in Kansas. Students were able to raise about $500 for that project, so it went very well. Then we ended up having as well the USD 489 staff identify focus areas for our Kansas Education Systems accreditation. It was really for those that were able to go from building to building and see. Shanna said the same, and I was able to witness that. Going from building to building, it was just wonderful to end up seeing all the different staffs working to try to continue to work through this process. Staff members, they work throughout the district. They're given opportunity to identify 2 focus areas by building. Staff were able to utilize in-service day that was on January 15th. They identified focus areas that will help each school target where it most needs to improve, and the district will also establish 2 key areas of focus during this accreditation process. And really thanks to all the staff who are able to provide valuable feedback. The idea there, just so a review, it's been stated, but it's good to go over and over again. Buildings do try to identify 2 in their buildings, but then our job is to take all of those and then try to end up identifying 2 for the district, and that's what we're really working from then.
Just a question.
Sure.
Will we have a chance to see what the schools have identified?
Yes. Yeah, we have not met as a group to talk on this on their individual buildings, but I would say it's going to be either the next, could be the February meeting before we have it together. Yeah. Yeah, well, it may be the second, I should have said it that way, the second February meeting, but we will have that to share.
April, so we have till April to kind of tweak it and make sure that we're solid. We have a meeting this Friday with other districts to discuss things, and so we will bring it to the district side council and then back to you as well.
And just on a first impressions, how's that articulating with I think poster back there, our district goals?
Well, you know, the relationships part is coming out as a very strong, whether that's with families, but I think a lot of community, and so I think that there will be some things that we can draw from, but it's really more focused on the education and students and that aspect.
That has a few.
Which is at least 2 up there, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it'd be nice if we could at least make that linkage so that we stay mission focused.
Well, there's no doubt when we look at the mission and the goals this next time of having the strategic, that you're going to have to be looking at the results of our accreditation process of making determinations that there's, I mean, I don't want to say coincidence, by 2 different groups working, you still may hit things that actually have some similarity. But I would say that the surveys that were given, the work that the teachers did, all of that needs to come together, and that information needs to be part of the goal setting in the future as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Pam Dreiling was named the Hayes Post Teacher of the Month for January. Congratulations to her. She's been teaching preschool-age students at the Early Childhood Connections Ellis site for the past 11 years. Pam was nominated by Mackenzie Hinman for her compassionate interactions with her students. Pam has taught for the past 25 years and enjoys bringing laughter to all of her students on a daily basis. Pam believes in operating a classroom like it is a family because it encourages the children to bring stronger relationships. Thank you, Pam, for sharing your passion with students in the Early Childhood Connections program. We ended up having a donation from Golden Belt Bank. They ended up providing money to, again, help with the USD 489 Hope Pantry. Generous employee Jean Day contributions and then a matching donation from the Golden Belt Bank is what donated $1,750 to use to purchase food, hygiene supplies, clothing for families across the district. USD 489. Really like to thank Golden Belt Bank for making this investment in the families in need at USD 489. The donation will save hundreds of families from going hungry during the extended breaks from school. And I think that is the next one is spring break. It's been the community's been very generous to our pantries. And again, I know usually the money's coming to the USD 489. Do want to point out that that does flow down to others as well. If the ones that exist at the high school and the middle school are in need, some of that supplies can go to them as well. So it really does work out and helps the whole district as we end up working through this. I think that is all of them.
Any questions for John on the school spotlights? Okay. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the report of the superintendent. Turn it back over to John again.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to share that an event that is quite significant, especially for the hometown, of Lieutenant Governor Collier, who has announced at the end of last week that he's going to come to Hays on Wednesday, which is very significant because Wednesday is also the day he will be governor of Kansas. He's going to be coming in to Hays. He'll do some tours, and then he'll turn around and go back to Topeka, and same day be inducted or sworn in as our governor. I don't know exactly what all the tours will be, but one in particular is West Side. He intends to tour West Side. I was a little bit naive in the whole planning of that when I was called and then informed again just this morning as far as security. And at one point I thought, well, this is a great opportunity, but they have it very tagged down as to who's planning to be there. They want to know every name that would be there, and really I don't think they have intentions of anybody else wandering in the building during that time. So it's going to be very, very tight, and I guess that makes sense. I just a little outside of my area as far as really understanding the need for that kind of security. But that is happening on Wednesday, and I'm excited about that possibility for Hays to get that kind of recognition as well, and for his planning of giving Hays a little bit more again, I'd say recognition on a very special day in his personal life as well. So, and if you have questions, I'm sorry, that's about all I know. I don't have anything else to share on that one. So, Children's Center, I need to end up, we had mentioned earlier that we do need to end up identifying with a retirement. We need to end up having some help by at least one person on this board in the hiring process because of that retirement with the Children's Center. And we end up having, and that'll be mentioned a little bit more by Lance, and then we end up having the need too of formalizing a position to be on that Children's Center as an advisory board, and we'll have that on the agenda probably in February to try to talk to some I think we have at least one person who has contacted me, one of the board members, saying they'd like to do that. So I don't think that's a problem whatsoever. It's just a matter of trying to make it formalized and official that we end up having someone on it. So that would be all.
Very good. Any questions for John? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the financial report. Tracy?
We have one new exception this month I wanted to point out. It's on page 8 under the location 61 for pathways. It does show that we're over budget on our certified staff. Those are for assistive technology services that we started and implemented after the budget was created. So I just wanted to point that out. We are right about 10% under budget. Currently, we've spent 36.4%, and allowable year-to-date is 46.4%. So we're doing very fine there. This is through the month of December, so we are halfway through the fiscal year in that regards. On capital outlay, you'll see that we still, as of December 31st, have received $331,000 in revenue into capital outlay. We did receive our large tax distribution payment in January, which was $1.5 million to capital outlay and $2.8 million to supplemental general fund. So you will see that on next month's report. And we have expended a little less than $2 million in the budget. We've spent $1.6 million at this point in capital outlay. Are there any questions I can answer?
Just, you have one. I noticed that the flagging the change of the classified staff with that. Is that, it sounds like we have enough to cover that, but it wasn't part of the original.
Right, we do. Yeah, we do have plenty to cover it. Just when I wrote the budget, you know, in last May, I had to estimate what I thought the raises would be, and then you guys approved a little bit higher than what I had originally budgeted. So those lines you're going to see over, but the total budget, we're well within our budget.
And the other is just out of curiosity, I was looking at on the district-wide line 300 purchase professional and technical services, and we're 6.77% spent. Is that typical at this point? I mean, that's great where you save that much money, but is that something we're going to see spike up later as we do something?
Let me look at exactly what is reflected in that line, and
So
I can let you know.
Everything else looked like, okay, we're about to that one too. Stuck out.
Yeah, let me look and see. We may have some larger payments or something coming up later in the year, but I can double check that and let you know.
Very good. Any other questions for Tracy on the financial report? Okay, moving on. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, to include the board meeting minutes for January 15th, 2018, the approval of bills in the amount of $347,240.89. Personnel transactions, and I did want to point out in personnel transactions, we do have 2 retirements in there. Susan Bowles, who's been with the Hayes Area Children's Center for 30 years, and Susan Stark, let me make sure I have the names right here. Maybe, there we go, yeah. Susan Stark, who has also been with Hayes High School for 19 years, so we do appreciate all your service, guys. And the remainder of that, to include the financial reports, to include the petty cash report, the Early Childhood Connections Director's Report for January 29, 2018, and the Early Childhood Connections Policy Council minutes for November 27, 2017. Entertain a motion to approve those.
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved by Board Member O'Borney.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Adams. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to new business, first item on the agenda is the Hilton construction project, and I think we have a representative from the city to discuss some of the tax implications.
Hey, board members, I'm Jacob Wood, the Assistant City Manager. First of all, thanks for letting me come and just talk about this project that we have going on in the city. Hilton Garden Inn is a 4-story hotel with approximately 100 rooms and 8,400 square feet of convention space. They have, and it will be located just west of the Walmart. There's actually a map in your packet if you want to pull that up. You can see where it's located. They have requested a couple of incentives from the city. One of those is a community improvement district, which is a 2% additional sales tax that will go just on that property. And then they've also requested a transient guest tax rebate, which would be all the transient guest tax that's collected on site, so from the people that stay in the hotel there. And then they've also requested tax increment financing, which is why I'm here to talk to you guys tonight. Tax increment financing has implications for the city, the school board, and the county as well. What tax increment financing allows the developer to do is capture the incremental increase in property taxes from the current value that the property has today to the new value that it'll have once the building is built. So what that means is they will continue to pay property taxes at the current level that the property pays right now, but the new property tax will be, they won't actually pay that. It'll be used for valid infrastructure, things like that. There's different things that are allowed by the state for them to use that on. How it affects, it does affect schools a little bit differently than the other property tax entities. With the city and the school, or the city and the county, it would take the full amount of property taxes that we would collect. But for the school, the 20 mil general fund would continue to be collected even on the new value, and then also the capital outlay levy would continue to be collected on the new value. So the values of any other levy that you guys would have, like your supplemental general levy and the declining enrollment levy, would not be collected on the new value. So you keep the general, you keep the capital outlay, but the other kinds of property taxes would not go up as the value of the property goes up. This is something that you guys, if you decide that you're not interested in moving forward with this, you could pass a resolution that says, basically the resolution would say that the district is not something that you guys are interested in going with, that it would have an adverse effect on you. And if you were to do that, that would put a hold on this project altogether. So you guys kind of have veto authority over this, as well as the county. The county has that option as well. As far as the city, city staff has recommended that we move forward with this because of the added benefits to the community, which would be additional infrastructure. The extension of 43rd Street would open up additional area for development out there. We would get additional sales tax revenue for the city and the county. There's going to be convention space, which we don't have very much of that in the community right now, and then additional hotel rooms. And with the closing of the Ambassador Hotel, we've kind of gone backwards in hotel rooms over the last couple of years, so this would help to have additional hotel rooms. And I would be, we have a public hearing that will be held on February 8th at the city, and from that time, the school and the county have 30 days if they are interested in passing a resolution to do that, to halt the project. And I'd be interested, I'd entertain any questions if you guys have anything. Okay, so what happens with tax increment financing? You would be held solid with what you pay or what that property pays in property taxes today. So that never changes for the time period. The new property value after the hotel was built, you would not collect taxes on your supplemental levy and on your declining enrollment levy, but you would still continue to collect taxes on the 20 mil general budget levy and the capital improvement levy.
At the new value of the property?
At the new property value. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you run any financial models that we give the district to deal with that?
The total amount, and it's actually over a 20-year time period that that would happen. The total amount that they expect is $3.7 million in property taxes, but that includes all taxes. So that includes the city, county, and the school district. I don't have it broken down for what you guys would actually be short on that. But if it's not built, there won't be any at all. So, I mean, that's the... And we don't think that this will happen if the tax increment financing isn't approved. I mean, at this point, the developers have said that's something they need to have in order to move forward.
Just a reminder, too, that next fiscal year is the last year we'll be getting any funding for declining enrollment. That will be out done by then.
Anybody have any other questions for Vic?
You said this was going to happen over 20 years? Like we wouldn't get that money until 20 years?
We get it all for 20 years.
That's right. Right. The developer will basically won't pay those property taxes for 20 years.
Very good.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
How many, just question, what's the new employment coming from?
I don't have the specific numbers on how many jobs. I can get that information to you.
Yeah, is it the sort of thing that we have capacity in the community, or would it draw new families in? That would affect.
I think probably with management, they'll bring somebody in from the outside. With other staff, they'll probably try and pull from within the community.
I would bet a hotel that size, you're probably looking at 80 to 100 jobs.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is the Technology Committee report. I think we have Scott and a few others here to go over that.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak to you tonight. I do have, just due to some illness, scheduling conflicts, we do have some of the committee members here tonight, but not everybody's able to attend. What we have put together attached up here is a replacement schedule for our current one-to-one program, trying to look at where we sit now, how we can go forward, and do that in a fashion to minimize the spikes in purchasing. When the original purchase was done back in 15-16, it was a rather large purchase, and what the committee was tasked with was trying to find a way to spread that cost out over the years. So what this does is gets us into a 4-year cycle on the technology. It also does take advantage of either using taking the usable life of the device, or I guess capturing that resale value that's still within the device itself. So pretty straightforward. Try to keep it in that $250,000 range. Also looking at taking a building at a time makes it a little easier as far as management of the devices. That we don't have a mix of devices within a building and different issues. I will take if any of the committee members have anything to add on that, but I don't know. We're good. So, any questions?
Scott, is this just to replace existing with going back with whether it's iPads? Is this everything? iPads, laptops, desktops?
So the high school side, it figures in, they would come up first next year. So there's not a particular device selected. Looking at probably a 2-in-1 laptop of some kind to replace the Surfaces. Elsewhere down through the middle school and elementary schools, looking at iPads there, just because that's what we currently have. But as time moves forward, technology does change. So,
Lance, these are just student machines.
Right. Right.
So there'd be no desktop. Well, no, there'd be no.
I didn't know.
No
labs or anything like that. So.
And carry a desktop around.
John, what's your plan going forward on this? Is this?
Well, this was talked about at an earlier time as far as trying to create. The board's conversation was very pleased with the transportation, the buses, the vehicles, and having a way in which they could predict how much money would be spent every year instead of there being spikes, that it ends up having some uniform amount that we can plan on. And so from my view of this, it looks like the committee has succeeded. I was a little surprised, though, that the number there was $68,000 for replacement, or not replacement, for buyback for the machines at the high school. That was certainly higher than I thought that they would be, but that's the number that Scott had gotten. The value is better with iPads as far as buyback than other machines. They seem to keep a better value. From the standpoint of what the state our own commissioner is pushing across the state. He's definitely a proponent of believing one-to-one is needed. The question is, how do you do that? There's a lot of ways to do it. In our particular case, which I found amazing last year, was that the year before there was such a gigantic purchase, over $1 million, that was put into this project of getting pretty much all new machines. And I don't know if I find that amazing, and I hate to do that again. There needs to be something like this that's put in place over time to pay for it. Putting some perspective into that amount, and I don't know, it's all a matter of how, what people, I divided that amount into $225,000 divided by a number of students, and it's about $75 a year is what we're paying to provide a device in the student's hands. And you can play that out even more. You can took it and divide it by number of days, about 43 cents, per day that kids, would have a device that they're using, is how it kind of figures out. I'm just saying we're not too far away, and I truly believe that we're going to see less and less need of printed materials, whether we like that or not. Some of us really love the idea that books are a necessity, but the reality of it is there is more and more push that our textbooks are going to be digital. So, that's my thoughts behind it. Now, I know there's a lot more behind this, because this is just one piece of the project. The other is now trying to get other vendors in, and what are the machines, and what are we looking at of trying to then buy at this point for that amount at the high school. That's
what are we trying to accomplish with one-to-one or technology in general?
Well, there's two sides of it from my viewpoint. One ends up being it is a tool that provides information for the students. Okay. The other ends up being it's just the technology itself and the ability to manipulate that technology and utilize it in such a way that when they try to get jobs or go on to college or wherever they are, that they are comfortable with the technology that they're going to be having to use. And from what we can gather, it does appear that just about any job requires some kind of need of utilizing an iPad, or excuse me, I shouldn't say iPad, a tablet of some sort, a computer. That necessity is there in just about any job at this time. So I'd say both of those are probably maybe just as important.
And how much of this is moving us to open education resources, cost saving on textbooks or something?
Well, I'd love to say, there was a time that I'd love to say that this is going to save money in the long run because of that. Textbooks are expensive. My gosh, the printed copies are ridiculous as well. Whereas this allows you to end up having materials that are going to be updated on a yearly basis, sometimes even 6 months that they're updated. Whereas your textbook, you get committed, and that printed copy's there until you replace it 7 years later or whatever that is. So there's some advantages that way. But no, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, when some of this started, and I was at Harrington, I would say, yes, there was the excitement of, okay, we can save money on this. But certainly those print companies are smart enough that they tied it in, they threw it in that, oh, we'll give you the same, you don't even have to pay for the digital. We'll give you the digital, and if you buy these copies. So you get a digital for, that's how it was. That's not how it is now. At this particular point, whether you're spending it on the book or you're spending it on the digital copy, it's it's about the same price. So they have worked it so that they're not losing money in this. They're certainly, they had a plan years ago, and it's working very well for them at this time.
Scott, do these numbers include warranty, cases, all that type of stuff? I know last time that came after the fact, that
Yeah.
tacked on.
So looking at least at the middle school, elementary numbers, the middle school I figured, I think it was $360 a device, and then, you know, the cost of the iPad, I mean, if that's where you stick, has gone down year to year. So the elementary I had at $320, but trying to figure in, you know, cost of an iPad now is around $290, so that $360 would cover a case. You know, trying to look at that complete
And are we just doing on iPads and laptops, and the other ones just doing 1-year warranties? Are we doing 3 years? What are we doing on those?
I'd like to do a 3-year warranty.
And these numbers include that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We talked about this a lot the last time, and so my concern is we're going to go buy a device, and this is what we did last time, and then we said, well, afterwards we'll figure out what software we're going to use when they get in people's hands. To me, that's kind of the backwards way to look at it. The first would be is what are we trying to accomplish with these devices? And then what are the tools that we're going to have, whether it be software or whatnot, apps that are going to run on those, and then we select a device that meets those requirements versus saying we need to go have an iPad. Because that's really where we're at. I mean, we're buying a brand name instead of buying a tool. And to me, when we talk about bonds budgeting and that money that we spend on computers comes out of a capital outlay budget, do we need the Cadillac or the, you know, and I've got an Apple up here, and I'm a big fan of theirs, but and I've got an iPad and I don't have my computer, but they're nice, but they're expensive, and they're a lot more expensive than the other alternatives. The last time we looked at this, the only time I ever heard a software piece was there was a Mosey Math. I think that was the name of it, and I looked it up while I was here, and they had a tablet option, but they would sell you a $69 tablet. They would sell you the whole software package, K through 8, and it had all the core curriculum stuff for all subjects. And I called them later that week, and it was going to be about $115,000 to do tablets and a software license for, I think, 3 or 4 years. But we never, that was just not an option because, well, those are cheap tablets. But the iPads cost us $400,000 or $500,000. I mean, you could replace those iPads yearly if you needed to, or the tablets, I'm sorry. And to me, it just seems like sometimes we get into this cycle of saying, well, here's the latest, greatest thing, and we want that, which we all do. I mean, it's human nature to want the cool, neat thing, but the question is what are we trying to accomplish with it? And if we can accomplish what we are with something that's cheaper, shouldn't we do that?
And I guess on top of that, I guess to add on to that, I know that was one of the things I know was brought up last time when we looked at iPads, and I know I'm looking back at my notes, and I was told that at the time we couldn't do iPads in a lot of areas because the software support was not there. A lot of things we couldn't run on iPad and things like that. Has that changed? Have we looked at that stuff as far as the software pieces and things like that now?
Yeah. Marie or Shanna, you'd probably speak maybe a little deeper to it, but as far as the classroom, curriculum software and things like that, I don't think we've run into...
I mean, have we changed curriculum software as far as now that it is compatible now? Or because before we were told it wasn't compatible and that was the reason we couldn't do that in a lot of areas?
I mean, in the time that I've been here and we've used the iPads, it's been going.
You're speaking to the high school machines right now?
Just in general, yeah.
Okay, because it was the high school that there was even a vendor that came in this year to try to share what's possible at this point with the machine. And in that particular case, they've made some steps in that way. But I would say that still there's the committee that had looked at that had informed me that there was still the feel that the advantage that exists of having a different machine as well and what it can provide at the high school outweigh just having the same machine throughout K through 12. Now there may be a point where the iPad or there's a product there that truly can do all of that. The issue there ends up being there's no doubt what was just said, the benefits of what kind of machine you're using and tied to curriculum. I'd like to at least share my personal thoughts in the past is curriculum is the most important. You pick the best curriculum for your students, and then you find tools. You know, that's it. If we ended up picking a curriculum that we feel is best for our students, and we have a tool that's not able to end up working with that, that's wrong. I mean, it ends up being. But you don't. I would also say you don't pick a tool and utilize curriculum that's tied to that tool just because, again, of the better deal. You need to have the best with the curriculum. The tool is what you can end up making the deals with, and I think that's what's being said. But curriculum is priority in trying to make sure that whatever our students are taught is the most current and what's best. But I guess I would also say I never questioned too much when the decision was to go with iPads a couple years ago. Yeah, I say iPads are probably considered one of the best, machines. Out in the public, when you talk about tablets, most people generally, if they have the ability, they'll get an iPad. I think that's very common. I don't know if I would say that when it goes to the upper level machines of a laptop being an Apple laptop. I think some of that changes a little bit at that particular point. But for elementaries across the state, I know I'm not off base in saying that iPads are probably the common tool.
I'm going to ask Marie, if you would. I think we've had presentations when Board Member Schwartz wasn't here about what is happening, the curriculum is happening. Could you share some of those things a bit?
Sure.
Because I think at this point, we've invested, the curriculum has been developed, it's already there in place, and you can share some of that.
And further into what I do every day, we've spent considerable financing and time training teachers to use an iPad. Now the schedule that's up here is not device specific, and if we find the right tool for the tasks that we're trying to complete and it happens to not be an iPad, then it happens to not be an iPad. Currently, the iPad gives us communication tools that I just have not seen available on other devices. Apple is by far superior with giving a student the opportunity to analyze and synthesize the information that is available on a learning objective, the data and the topic of content for your curriculum, and then allowing the student in a powerful way to communicate what they've learned in ways that we never did with the poster board when I was a kid, in ways that we never did even with a digital camera when those started coming out, right? They now are able to incorporate multimedia in really, truly amazing ways and communicate and show their voice in a wide variety of choices with this device that we have currently given them. Now, if we find in the future that that's not the case, the idea behind this is that right now what we're seeing with technology moving forward is about this price point, in and around this price point. So as we explore devices in the future, we can make the choice that goes with our curriculum and our content.
One of the tech meetings, I didn't make all the tech meetings, but one of them that I did make, if it fits into the conversation, was the reliability too.
Right.
It's interesting that the reliability of the iPads as far as servicing plays a big part of this too. and they're reliable. The most of the iPad issues that exist is because of damage, of dropping them or other issues. As far as them being reliable, they're very reliable. The other item that came out in the discussion, and I know, Marie, you're right, we're not identifying that it's iPads, that we're talking about the schedule. But the other item that came up with iPads is I was so surprised at the buyback value, even after 4 years for an iPad, is, I thought, ridiculous. As much money as what they will, like $80, I think, is what you had told me, Scott, is possible.
Yeah, and in talking with Apple, they use the example, some districts will finance the iPads for 4 years. After 3 years, we'll find a company, buy them back. They'll pay out the 4th year and still have money to put back into devices again and keep them rolling that way. I mean, they do hold their value.
I think for us as a committee and as a teacher too, I think it isn't about getting a new machine every so many years, but it's about being fiscally responsible and allowing that scaffolding to come in, and really to make sure, battery life and things like that are taken into account. Speaking for the iPad, I was kind of a skeptic at first. I didn't, I was kind of the laptop guy. And I have really enjoyed the iPad. I mean, honestly, I think we got the better end of the deal. The durability, the speed at which it goes, the apps are, we find anything free is first, of course, but we find ways around it. And it was, it's a process, and we're still learning on that stuff as well.
You talked about earlier, you asked about, are we moving to where we have open ed resources? Well, we certainly have open ed software. We are not, besides special ed considerations, like when you're talking that high of technology to meet the needs of some of our special cases, we have spent some dollars. We have purchased one iPad app for all K-8 students. One in the 3 years. Everything else we are using is free.
When you say one, how many apps would we just?
Hundreds.
Of apps that teachers use?
Couple hundred.
Yeah, there's
260 in the management system? Yeah. At least. That's probably low.
And so it is possible that in the future, maybe to an Android-type operating system.
Sure.
Because the apps seem to be.
Oh yeah, well, and a good portion of what we use, and actually it's lovely for me where I train across devices, a chunk of what we use with kids on the iPad, it's programmed for as well. The company has developed the same product for, and then we use with high school students at the high school, and it's still free on the laptop.
Okay, so I do want to thank you for this, because I think the original charge to the committee and you taking it on was to do much like we do with transportation. At least this gives us kind of a cap that we can plan on. And I do understand your point is that, even though I may use an iPad at a time, I've been finding that an Android operating system seems to be better in some ways. But I think your point is well made that we don't know in 1920 year what we'll be doing. So
what the right thing will be.
So we may come back to that discussion like, well, we think this is a better machine, we may abandon it, or whatever it may be. But giving us a 5-year plan that gives a reasonable cap here. Although, the only thing I wonder about, is this optimistic on the resale value, or where are we going to sell it? China?
So on resale value, when you look at Hayes High, they actually quoted $96 a device there. That's assuming that every device out there gets a B average from A to D. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that every device is a B average out there. So I came down. They were saying 72,000. I think 68,000. Take into account some of those, but we won't know until that. But everything as far as buyback value, the middle school, that was figured at $100 a device. The 3, 4, and 5 was at $75 a device, and K1, 2 at $50. So obviously, I tried to put in there that it, steps down year after year.
But it's a helpful planning document.
Mm-hmm. Well, if this seems like the committee is on the right track, they would go back to the committee soon to then start getting the vendors to come in to focus on, the high school. That's where the focus would be, is high school with the vendors in the next month or two.
Well, my concern the last time is we did a lease, and this would be my fifth lease or fifth computer purchase, so I do have some experience on this, but this one, we were told the last time that this had everything. It was $1.6 million or whatever it was, and it was a 4-year lease and it encompassed everything. Well, then, after they got here, the next 5 or 6 school board meetings, there was another purchase, another purchase, another purchase. And to me, if you're going to have an IT plan that's similar to the transportation plan, you would encompass everything.
Okay. Well, and we did talk about that, because when I was there, the question was, it wasn't me that asked, but what about the other machines, the teachers? And so that part of the other machines, all the other technology, there is another schedule here, and that can be shared. It's supposed to be layered so that it layers on top of that, so that it keeps it even as well. And that probably should be shared with the board as well. We can definitely do that.
We can add that back in.
Because it's created.
Cases, software, anything that's computer driven.
And the infrastructure side, that's something, we've gone through a lot of that, but yeah.
But there's still a cost.
Yeah.
I think if you go back the time I've been on the board, that we've spent $15 to $20 million in that time on technology.
Well, I think that's what should be shared, and we can, actually that could be put together for the next board meeting to even show you, because it was already put together, it just wasn't layered. They were focusing on one-to-one, which one-to-one isn't the teachers' machines, but looking at it from a technology of what the cost is and trying to keep it, because you could do the same mistake. You could end up purchasing all of the teachers' machines the same year, and you're still going to get that spike. So it has to have the same kind of a schedule that layers right on that as well, so that you keep it at it wouldn't be $225,000 a year. It'd be more than that, with the teacher machines, but that's necessary too. But that can be done.
And I appreciate the fact, because that's exactly what we were looking for, some sort of a schedule on there. I guess the only thing that sticks in my mind, and I guess I would entertain some more information, and maybe that's something you guys come back with, is I remember when we first went through and did this, was the fact of there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not one-to-one was the direction to go. And there's still, that discussion still goes on across the U.S. Have we seen enough data here? Can we say definitively that since we've gone one-to-one that we've seen better test scores and better this and better that since we've gone one-to-one?
And just to add on to that, because what was the last lease, the big focus is what's our plan? What do we hope to? What is our objective plan that we can set out there that we can measure after year 1, 2, 3, and 4? These iPads are supposed to last 5 to 6 years, and now we're at 4 years and we're replacing them. So that's a little tough to understand as well. But the issue is how do we measure it? And if you're going to make that large of an expenditure, shouldn't we be able to? A lot of the plans that when we researched that, or I found when I researched it, was they would have a goal that test scores are going to increase by 20%. And maybe in year 1 they find out, well, that was way too optimistic or didn't go far enough. But it's a moving plan that you evaluate. But as you go along, your goals should be much closer to what you can attain. But to me, if you go out and spend all this money on this technology just under the hopes that, well, because we have technology, we're going to be better educated, we're going to have better test scores. It's the concept of we want them to be better able to use them. Do we test them when they come in at the start of the year and say, here's the tools or the things we want you to be able to do, and have them take it at the start of the year and at the end of the year to see if they've improved? Do we have mandates for every teacher? Because I think you guys on the tech committee, I've sat on that for years, and the tech committee is those people that are very tech savvy and want to be involved and want to incorporate that into what they do. Unfortunately, that's a small group, and you've got a lot of teachers that may not want that.
There's, the 2 different items, as far as we do believe that machine, the iPad, can last 5 years. The only reason why it was talked about going to the 4 is because of that buyback value that exists. And that was the piece that ended up saying it makes sense to consider that, because you do get a little bit older and then you have a little more trouble with the machine. So that was why Are we questioning the reliability of an iPad in their 5th year? Not really. It's more a matter of just looking at how many more problems you might have in that 5th year versus how much money you can get back from them, just with the buyback. And then the part as far as the rationale of trying to find the data that supports that one-to-one is beneficial. Unto our own island, I would say that makes complete sense. If you look at just from the standpoint of what is coming from the state alone, the state just alone is saying that we need to be supporting districts to have the funds and the ability to end up providing one-to-one for all students.
And don't get me wrong, I live and breathe technology, and I'm for that.
I know.
It'd be great if the state wants to throw us some more money because of that, but I doubt that's going to happen.
I know.
So.
But that alone is just saying they're identifying that. Are we ahead of the game? Actually, no. It's really across the state. It's very common to have one-to-one at this particular point. I would say that the commitment that was made back in 15-16 for Hayes was just tremendous. Prior to that, I guess it was a little bit more of a hodgepodge of what existed. But from that date till now...
Well, and that was my only reason for asking, because like I said, I know you see even other areas where they have, maybe middle schools, high schools, things like that. I've just, because I know that was one of the things that was batted around,
Right.
like the grade schools. Are we better off doing, a group of them that are shared, a classroom set, that can go around, for sake of argument, 3rd grade or whatever the case may be. And I'm sure you can speak on that a little bit, but I guess that's my question, because that was talked about and contested, or hotly contested, when we talked about this originally, that yes, we have to have these, it's going to help this and this and this. But from what I've seen, I'm not saying we're doing bad, but I haven't seen something that went like this after we got the technology.
Well, and I would caution against thinking that technology alone is going to cause, and you also have to consider where we're starting. Hayes as a district has the Lake Wobegon effect, is what I always say. Our students are above average. I just put out in our newsletter, at Wilson, 80% of our students score at or above the 50th percentile in math, and 63% score at or above the 50th percentile. So our bell curve is shifted. So to expect scores to see, a ramp up is not reasonable. But again, technology is a tool that we can use to accomplish many purposes. And that's, as I was sitting there thinking, it's a tool if you give teachers, equip them with a tool and adequate training. It's amazing what they can do with the tool, which would include, it doesn't just impact test scores. We're using that technology to impact mental health of our students. We're using it to help them with mindfulness and things to calm themselves. We're using it to do things that are instructionally sound that improve behavior in the classroom, such as provide more effective instructional feedback. Things like provide more opportunities for all students to respond. Technology allows us to do that in a different way than some other tools would allow us to do, if that makes sense. So to find a tangible effect is very difficult to pinpoint because it's so complex.
Well, and I understand, don't get me wrong, I understand there's tons of things that go into that. I guess that was, like I said, that was a lot of the discussion is, and it sounds like we still don't have that absolute measurement of, how do we know? And I'm not disagreeing at all.
That is $1 million question. If you can find somebody who can tell us how specifically to measure to isolate and measure the impact of technology as a tool on instruction, I'd love to know how. I don't know how you isolate it to do that, because there's so many variables that feed into that and so many impacts that it can have on. You know what I mean? There's so much it impacts.
Wouldn't you take all of those things you said, mental health, and I'm sorry I didn't write them all down, but all those areas that you just talked about, and you measure them before you have iPads or any technology, and then you measure them again after you have them, and that's going to tell you.
It could. Certainly technology could be one piece that could help improve those. There's right. We're also doing foundation. Yeah, you can't isolate tech, but. Yeah, that was all I wanted to say.
The concern I've got is and this is, because for me, the last one was at $1.6 million, and it sounds like this one's going to be the same, if not more, over that 4-year window. And so they're huge expenditures. And the question becomes is, if they say we need a new school bus, we could measure the effectiveness of that, and whether, to buy a new one at 10 years versus at 15 years, you can measure the breakdowns between 10 and 15, and I understand technology is a little different, but if you want to be able to say that we need these kids to be able to learn these set of skills to show that they've mastered technology, then to me, the easy thing to do is to create a grade level or school level test that said, here's what we expect them to learn this year. Here's a curriculum for each teacher that's going to use it, and you test them when they come in, and you test them at the end, and you're going to know exactly what they learned, right?
Are you talking about technology?
Are you talking about the tech?
I'm just looking at technology, because we were told there's two pieces. One that's just their ability to use these devices, which doesn't even get into the issue that if you hand a kid an iPhone or an iPad, they're probably going to be able to use it better than you within an hour, and every kid's almost got one anyway. But that's one piece. But if you're going to test how do you use that device, how do you test if you're going to use a computer?
Let me add something in here. Just doing a quick search. There is research that says one-to-one do support research. I shared this with the board a couple months ago at a board meeting. So there is some stuff that is related to that. It's a meta-analysis, so it's not necessarily strong. And it comes from I'll send it out to you so you can see it, and I'll send it out to the board as well. But there is another aspect that you are forgetting to address as well. It's not all about the test scores. Some of the other things which I think we do look at is increase in writing. Increase in writing is a vital skill to go on, as well as technology use. And that seems to be one of the big things that's been looked at. The increase of project-based learning and individual ownership of their learning. If you look at the KISA, and if you look at the Mercury and the Gemini schools, they're right now trying to hire project-based learning coordinators, and I think we're going to get pressed upon that by the state at some point, because that's the way the state is going right now. Student-to-teacher communications, though that's something that's very important, because one of the big variables about student success is how much are parents engaged. And so if we can increase that, but I'm suggesting that in due diligence, answering what Board Member Schwartz asked, you should be also looking at that, not just the academics, because you are looking at both students. The other things we talked about, the attitudes towards laptops is probably in it, problem skills, ownership, and a few other things. It's not just about the test scores.
And I agree 100%, and I think a couple of you even said it wasn't just about that. I guess, and maybe it is, maybe that's that unicorn out there. It would just be great to see if there was something we could do to measure as far as, because I mean, like I said, having said that, there's lots of other states out there that don't do one-to-one and the other stuff. It would just be great to have that.
Clearly, what we've talked about is the tech committee, we need to take that information that was put together for the other machine, all technology, and get this on a schedule as well, so we know what that number is, not just, the other piece is, when we're talking about high school, don't think there's a question about one-to-one at the high school, because that's existed for, I don't know, 15 years?
Right.
Okay, so the high school's one-to-one probably isn't in question. So that part, the tech committee could go ahead and continue to work in getting machines and start studying that.
But the issue at the high school, though, would be, do we look at a bring your own device format?
Well, we did end up contacting other schools. We found very few that were doing that.
And when we started doing laptops, there was very few that were doing that, and we did it. And I mean, I think, I understand the concept. You don't want to just go pave your own way all the time, but if the question is if these kids already have devices, and the other side of this too is, my understanding, they're primarily used for word processors, email, communication devices, and research online. Is that a fair statement?
No, I don't think. I mean, I think that's half,
But
2/3.
Would a Chromebook work for this type of scenario?
Which currently runs
$180.
Yeah, the problem with the Chromebook, you got to remember, is what you buy is what you get. You can't add anything to the hard drive. There's no new applications, or with the Chromebook that people are spending $180 for, what you have as far as applications and programs is what you get.
So what, on the surfaces, for instance, what have we added to those other than just to?
Well, we use a wide variety of
the
web
Microsoft
based
Suite,
tools, but yes, the Microsoft Suite.
What other programs?
All of which are web-based?
I'm trying to think of the name of the
We,
science.
we use them both in a web-based and desktop platform,
Gotcha.
both, but yes.
I'm trying to think of the name of the probes that we use in our science department. Science probes. No. Yeah.
You have a science app or something that the science department uses. Are there others?
They use Gizmo.
Right. Gizmos
Gizmos
is
another one.
web-based.
Another one they use. And then the linear lab software.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I've heard Marty speak passionately previously about a student's ability to communicate his or her ideas. And I think a lot of what we do with the device, outside of word processing, outside of research, outside of, I don't know what the other thing you mentioned was, is communicate in, like I said, multimedia ways. And with the Chromebook, yes, you get this many tools. And with other devices, you get excessively more.
Scott, are you seeing more of your, and Marie, maybe you can answer this too, are you guys seeing more of your curriculum and more of the apps go to web-based? Or, I mean, I understand you obviously still probably have some that are local and the other stuff, but are you seeing more and more of them now that are available online that you can do the stuff, i.e. a cross-platform?
Yeah, and a lot are pushing that way. I mean, be it an app for a particular device or HTML5, like some sort of compatible website that goes that way. But I think that's an industry push kind of that way. So.
Right. I just didn't know if it's filtered or if you guys are seeing it at this level as well or not. So.
Yes, I would say so. The nice thing about, and John is absolutely right, I remember the day we'd buy 60 books and we get 63 licenses for 7 years or 6 years. We used to negotiate for 7, they want to give 6, but now you do pay for those. But on the other hand, when there are new things happening in the field of science or new resources or new historical events, they're updated when they happen. And those textbooks, which may have originally a copyright in 2016, now becomes 18 in November, and then 19 in January, and it really does allow us to have the most recent resources. Greg, you mentioned, kids have computers. My oldest daughter, who is now an instructional coach outside of Washington, D.C. in the Prince William County School Division, they are our iPad, K-12, and they also, it's just because of diversity and poverty, they really can't afford to do the bring your own device. In that year, I would say our low SES, reduced and free together, was probably 11 or 12%. And he's high school. I'm sorry, I can't speak for the district. This year, we went over 40% for the first time in my 24 years here. That's not a bad thing, but that is reality. And so when I would almost agree with you that every kid has a cell phone, the way I see it. As far as a device similar to any of those that you folks are using, or what I see when I walk through the Union at Fort Hays, I don't know that that's the case anymore. I really do believe that homes have very, very few computers and many, many phones. So, for what it's worth.
Well, and I guess I want to be kind of backtrack a little bit. My purpose in asking a lot of these questions tonight was that I don't want to have what I think's happened in other times is where you guys go back and then you come back with something new and then we hit you with another set of questions. I kind of wanted to throw everything out there so you guys can talk and discuss, and I mean, to the extent you've got to.
My passion as a principal is always to make our kids as competitive as possible. I don't think competition is a bad thing, but if I can put in the hands of kids something that makes them more competitive, to get the $1 million in scholarship again this year in May, to recognize that, not to 600,000 or 700,000. We want 1.2, and then next year we want 1.4. I don't think that, I'm not going to apologize for that. And if this gives our kids a leg up when they go to interview, or fill out the application, or sit in the room and say, here's your scenario, here's your computer, you research it and find a solution to it, because those are the kinds of interviews that our kids are going to have to face in the future. It's not as much, or program, it's not as much as, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want this job. It's a different, we have to prepare them to think on their feet. I do think, I don't have any data to support it, but I really do believe that if a kid can sit down to a Mac, an iPad, a Surface, a Windows platform, I think it's good that they can and they aren't intimidated by that. I think kids will be good at the iPads when they get to us in that operating system. And I think they'll be very good when they leave us on the Windows platform too. I want our kids to be as diverse and competitive as possible, if finances allow.
Yeah, my primary goal is to make sure that I think there is a way to test and to measure effectiveness. And I think that maybe your results won't be as clear-cut as it would be ideal, but there is a way to set goals to say we want test scores to increase. We want to, if it's emotional health, we want to be able to show that we've made some successes there and figure out ways to measure those things. It's a lot easier for us to go back and talk to the people that elect us to say, hey, we are asking those questions, and when you get parents complaining, oh, well, I don't know why they need to have all these devices at the high school. Yeah. They only use them for no good things, and we've got rules that they can't have them after 9 o'clock, and we don't see a lot of positive things out of them. That's difficult for me to explain. Well, yeah, this is why it's great, because I can't. But
may I approach the curriculum side?
Hold on just a second, because I just want to get my list of things. The other is money, because I think that oftentimes we say, well, here's the amount of money we have. And I understand if I'm on the tech committee and you're going to tell me I've got whatever the amount of money is, I'm going to spend every nickel of it because that's what I would do. But my concern is that what sacrifices as a board, as a district have we made to take care of our deferred maintenance? And if you're a voter going, well, we want to go, they want whatever the number of millions of dollars it is for a bond, and we've made no sacrifices anywhere amongst ourselves, it's tough for them to say, well, I want to go sacrifice my wallet and give more money every month when they haven't made any either. So,
but you can't sacrifice the students for the buildings. That scares me a lot.
Well, could you sacrifice that every third grade or the third grade section, because this is what other districts do in Kansas, that kindergarten at one building, they have one set of iPads that they all share. And the first grade has a set they share. You could do that, and I don't think we'd be any worse off, but we couldn't the last time, and that would save a bunch of money. So those are areas that you could make sacrifices.
I was just going to mention many of our classes, especially in the area of Carl Perkins, have a list of competencies that they have to check off on the beginning of the year and end of the year. So it's really not uncommon to do. It isn't only about the technology, but it's what they learn with the technology more so than, and you have to be able to manipulate technology to learn those things, those competencies. So. Right.
Yeah. Let me ask, I'm going to change the question a little bit because I think we're a little bit off, but one of the things you've got here, the base 1-1, we've embraced that, teachers have developed curriculum around it, and you do need to look at additional measures, not just test measures, though, because there are a lot of other secondary factors that come out. But where in the budget do we have things for if particularly at the high school? I've been out visiting some other high schools, looking what they've done with their bond issues, and I've seen a graphic arts laboratory, and they're using high-end machines. Are not going to do what they're doing, and their kids are walking out career-ready, job-ready with it. Is that part of this, or is that something we'd say, no, we're not going to do it because it costs money? And I'm asking on a curriculum point, is that this isn't part of that plan, or is that something you can come back to if we make a curriculum decision?
Allow me to answer that one simply because we've been talking about the career CTE at the high school. How do we get those classes with the best equipment so that they are prepared to go on to from the high school to Fort Hays State University in their new tech area and really just a seamless transition? Well, the way you do that is, yeah, there may be some money from the district, but sometimes that's donated money, sometimes that's grant money. There's such a variety of money that's identifying particular pieces of equipment and trying to get that. And that's been that way, and it'll continue. It'll continue to be that way. Does Scott have that on the schedule of saying, we're going to switch out this? No, he doesn't. You could.
But it should be.
You could guess it. Yeah, Perkins money and that, but that's limited as well as far as how much that provides. Clearly what I'm hearing is we need to end up taking that other piece and layer that in there, and that needs to be brought back. The other piece ends up being, and I do hear, there's got to be some kind of understanding of it's thought out as to how much money is too much money, how much money is too cheap, to where is that amount? Now, that question is when it goes back to do we need the very best machine? What a mistake if that be the case, because you are putting it in students' hands and you don't necessarily want to, that's irresponsible to end up putting the greatest amount of money into students' hands. What is the reasonable amount of money to put in students' hands over a piece of time that again is a good piece of equipment and really is going to do what we want it to do and last 4 years? We really would like to have a schedule that we're not in trouble in 3 years that we've got to do something drastic at that particular point. So those are things that have to be, will have to be addressed. But I think we can, I mean, I know we can continue to talk on it, but we're going to talk about it at the next meeting anyway as well if we bring back that other schedule. So if it's all right, we'll go ahead and give that task to the committee to layer that other piece on there and then have some more discussion as far as at this point, focusing probably on next year's, talking about the high school. Clearly, we have time to talk about the iPad too, because that's 2 years away, and that can end up being like Marie said, lots of things happen in 1 or 2 years anymore with technology. I don't think it's impossible that something rivals the iPad in just a year or two. That's a possibility. It could.
And so to be clear, it's not the device we're talking about, it's
the schedule.
The schedule.
I believe that's...
So that's why I have a question, point of order on this. If it would be advantageous for us to, because we do have it up as a motion to consider this time. Do we delay it?
Well, I think we just got it, so I would assume we wouldn't vote on it until the next time.
Do we want to give direction, you want, as president, give direction to the board to put all the layers in so we see everything at once to
and I think that's kind of what John had said, just to have everybody do.
Directing the board, from the board perspective, as the president directing
Okay.
it to do.
As I said, this is easy because it's done. It just needs to be put in the same graph there.
So that would mean, would this motion have to change since it was to look at K-12 1-1? It does not include initially the teacher as the motion. I don't believe it includes anything.
There's no motion on the table right now. Nothing's been made.
Yeah, I guess not. It's a discussion.
Yeah, just a discussion.
Yeah, my fault.
It's okay.
So it would be something that would incorporate the...
It would come back as a fully encompassing.
Okay.
Encompass everything.
It's not a motion, but it was a matter of understanding that they're working in the right direction. I mean, and it does sound like clearly they are. I mean, you don't want to have those giant spikes. I mean, that's one thing for clear.
And I do appreciate, I mean, what you guys are working towards on that, because like I said, that as John shared with the busing and things like that, it's helped out immensely to be able to put some planning in place as far as from a budgetary standpoint and everything. So I definitely think we're moving in the right direction. So.
Just a couple of quick things. In case the board's not aware, our full tech committee's not here tonight, and two of the valuable pieces of our tech committee is the member from Fort Hays State that is on the committee and the Hays Med that is on the committee, because they give us a different aspect of just a school, but also the business and the community when we're talking about the different one-to-ones, different things like that. And, you know, I got to thinking when you were talking about 14 years of one-on-one at the high school, I have watched that, and who can be on this tech committee right now? And, you know, Ted is on it from the middle school. We could put almost anybody from our building on this committee. Not to replace Ted, but when we started out at the several ago, Greg was right. It was the one that was really the techie. Everybody's a techie now. And so we could get almost any of the teachers in here to be on this committee because they all use it, and they all use it to enrich kids.
And there's a lot of training that goes in, Marie. We have to give her credit for that, the hours and hours in the summer. So in answer to that, Greg, that was one thing I was going to bring up, that in our building, we do a lot of that training and the teaming side of it, where we can get together and brainstorm. And it's amazing how one teacher will take an app or a feature, and then everyone kind of grabs onto it, and you learn from it, and then you share it. So there's been a lot of learning on our end too.
I would appreciate if you could bring in your community members to give us some insight on that.
Yeah.
Again, visiting districts, they did a reverse job fair where the teachers met with the community business people, and they said, you need to do this, this, and this, and that included things like one-on-one and building separate welding centers to keep kids from burning each other up. And all some weird things that you wouldn't thought of, but it may give relevance to what it is that we do need to do to address the needs of our community. I would appreciate if you could do that.
They give us a different perspective, and I think they think we found a whole other level of frugal.
Right.
What they do, it's difficult to hear them sometimes because the amount of money and resources that they're able to put towards, and people to put at things that frugal is a good thing, but I think that sometimes they think we're more than that.
Having had this,
it's good to hear from them, though. I understand the point.
But I had a previous computer burn up prior to everything. I still couldn't get it for 4 years. So yeah.
You need to talk to Derek.
He said no new computers, we'll fix it again. Anyway, but
it does give you a good perspective.
I would appreciate hearing that perspective, since we do represent the voice of the community, but the employers of your graduates is important to be sure we are doing what we have to do, which is to be sure they're ready for the world. So I appreciate that very much.
Okay.
And appreciate you.
Well, at the next meeting, we will bring that back and try to have at least one, maybe both of them present.
Have both of them here tonight.
Just didn't work with scheduling.
Okay.
It will be exciting as you hear Shanna talk about accreditation. I think that's kind of a nice segue. Much of what you'll hear about our goals, I think technology is an integral support, has become an integral support in what we hope to accomplish and what the state hopes to accomplish. So just keep that in mind.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys.
for the time and discussion tonight. So
Thank you.
We'll
Can
come
you
back.
get a specific example? Do we understand exactly, Sarah?
Yeah.
You'll tell us what.
Yeah. Yep. I think we got it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Next item on the agenda is administrative contract renewals.
This is the time of year that the board has to make a decision of renewing contracts for 3 individuals. That would be the superintendent, myself, the assistant superintendent, which is Shanna, and then the director of special ed, which is Raj. We end up having 3 different ways in which that works. For me, you're the ones making recommendation to yourself. Okay, you're the ones that make that decision. For Shanna, it is me that makes that recommendation to you about Shanna. And then for Raj, it is the advisory group superintendents of the co-op that makes that recommendation to the board. But at this particular time, that's part of what needs to be discussed and talked on. I would share with myself, I have had the pleasure of working for 27 years as an administrator in school districts, and I like having a 2-year contract, always have had, and I do now. But coming in and still being in that mode, I would say that when no one else, no other administrators in the district have that, they all have 1 year. It's I like to lead by being in the same spot. So I would certainly, however you make the recommendation, if you would recommend that I am renewed in my contract, I'm asking that it be a one-year contract instead of a 2. And then with the others, as far as recommendation, for Shanna Dinkle, my recommendation with evaluation and my observations, I would recommend to you that she be renewed with her contract. And for Raj Sharma, the Director of Special Ed, I would share from the advisory committee for the co-op that the recommendation is not to renew Raj's contract this next year.
And is this going to be an action item then on next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
In our, yeah, so all of those are, all of them would be one-year contracts, then yours was the only one that was 2, correct?
That's my understanding, is that mine was the only one. And I don't necessarily know the history of that, but I just am saying that, and mind you, I'd rather have a 2-year. I like having a 2-year, but I don't think I want to have that if no one else in the district does.
I think at the time when we were looking at that, I think it was the last one. I think we did a 3-year, wasn't it, with Dean?
Well, years ago, Fred used to be under a 3-year
Yeah.
contract, and then, but when we studied it back then, for all the districts in the state, about a third were 3, about a third were 2, and about a third were 1. And at one point, we got all the way back to 1 for everybody, I think, and then I know that the superintendent went back up to 2.
I think we just kind of tried to find a middle ground last time as far as a 2-year, if I remember right.
We discussed it.
Yeah.
I really remember some, I mean, I don't remember all the details, but I do remember us discussing it at length. For some reason, we decided to.
I think we were trying to find a happy medium between the 2. So.
Is it something we want to talk about with all administrators that we're looking at too? The one advantage I think of is if you do give an administrator 2 years, they may be willing to take some risk to try to improve the education in their school. Not, and I don't think any of our administrators are doing it bad, but they may feel, well, if I'm going to start a new initiative 1 year, I don't know if I'm going to have time to see it through. I don't know if there's any reason for us to.
That argument's been made before. My theory on that was as well, what the argument was is if you get a 1-year contract, you can only take 1-year risk. If you have 2-year, you can only take 2-year risk. If you have 3-year, you can only take 3-year risk. And so the end game to that is a lifetime contract. The drawback to it is if they're one-way contracts, what's the benefit to the board to give a 3-year contract if we're not going to make them stay for 3 years?
It's
or
not,
2 years?
and you're right, it's not a benefit to the board. The issue, though, ends up being, the benefit to those employees end up being, you don't have to inform those employees until late in the year. And the problem with that ends up being trying to get a job later in the year is an issue.
But don't our contracts have the same date that teachers have for the notifications?
For notifications?
Yeah.
I think they do.
So it's not that late. I think it's January, February, right? Which does get you into, I don't think it's the May date. I thought it was, unless it's changed.
What is that?
It the May date?
Yeah, the
Okay.
teachers is
We
May.
have a policy when you need to, the months, like February and March. That's
Our-
the policy when it comes to the board.
Our policy is not consistent with state statute. For the administrators, other than the superintendent, it's the 3rd Friday in May. But our policy is different. We
But the
changed that
super's
years
earlier
ago.
than that, right? He's in January,
Yeah.
February?
Well, that's why we're
Yeah.
dealing with, yes, that's why we're dealing with it. The super is first, and the assistant and the director, that has to be done first. But the issue there is, and I think the problem that exists in some districts, and that may be what happened in Hayes, I don't know, but the problem with a 2-year, for instance, the problem with the 2-year is not taking that initiative that if you have question, then you don't renew that person for a 2-year. You renew them for a 1-year. You end up having individuals who are given the message, they're not doing a good enough job, Next year, you have a one-year contract. That tells them right there that you're just not satisfied enough, or it tells them a little bit what Paul just said as far as they either kick things in gear and show them that they're able to in that year, or they're already in the process of looking. I say that because, again, an experience at the past district that I was in was an individual's contract. That's exactly how it was done. They were not renewed to 2, they were renewed to 1, and that person got a job immediately. They didn't stay another year. They knew that there was a process that was in play, and they went ahead and resigned and found a different job because they,
But if they don't, you're stuck with them for another year and a half at whatever level of employee they want to be. As long as they stay above being fired for cause, you're stuck with them for a year and a half.
This is true, but you also have employees that most of the time need employment, somewhere else. They understand that they're in a position that they need to do as good a job as they can so they have a better chance of getting a job somewhere else. So I'm not making the recommendation to go with 2-year for all administrators. My recommendation was take mine to 1. I'm just saying that for those districts that do use 2 for all, that's how they use it, and that works. It can work. The problem is some districts that do the 2 years they don't take the initiative to utilize it the way in which it's intended to.
The way we used to do it was a constant renew, so it was always every year you renewed them for 2, and maybe that's how the others.
That makes no sense. You might as well have a 1 year then, if that's how you do it.
But I do think if the other contracts that are that way, that their renewal date's not till May, we might want to push that up to January, February, somewhere in there.
Which other ones?
Like yours and.
Well, no, district admin is February.
Like principals.
Building admin is March. That's in policy, like Bo was saying.
Okay,
so
that's what I was.
That makes you act on those in those months.
And where are we compared to state, you said? The state statutes? Where's the state statute?
It's third Friday in May.
Okay. So ours are, okay.
Is in March.
Remember, the board moved it up years ago in order to provide administrators with the opportunity to find other employment.
I think that's when we scaled away the multi-year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you guys think those are too far out, I'm not opposed to doing all the central office in January and do the building administrators in February. And you're kind of, at that point, you're almost a year and a half, or not quite.
The reason why March was selected is because you're done with your evaluations with them.
Right.
That's why I'm sure you picked March.
It was.
Yeah.
And so I guess if we were going to move everybody up, that would advance your evaluations probably too.
Yeah.
Okay. No, and it's definitely something we can discuss more if need be. So. Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay. Moving on to the next item, old business. We have the Hayes High School HVAC project.
I will do my best with any questions that you have on that. Rusty went home. I'm afraid he may have the flu. He went home this afternoon. And then we end up having, James was not able to come today. He did come last week. We did talk with him, trying to get a little bit more information. A few things that was talked about in comparison and the numbers. If you, I'm trying to find it myself, scroll down to a little further. Yeah, the numbers are so small, you're going to have to look at it yourselves because it's hard for me to even point out. But the issue here, and that's not going to work over here, and my pointer, I should have got a different color than violet. But you end up having two different comparisons you've got to look at. One is a matter of the HVAC and controls, and the other is just controls only. And when you're making a comparison between the high school and then the middle school, they truly were two different kinds of projects. And you've got to make a comparison of the HVAC, and then you can look at the controls and make a comparison there at those numbers. But we talked at length at the last meeting We've had conversation with several board members since then about some of the details. I think instead of going, because of that, I think a lot of them were answered on an individual basis, but I'm kind of opening it up if there were questions at this point. Another thing that came up was a little bit too, we identify square footage, and part of the conversation too became, well, it's really cubic feet is what, when you're talking about heating and air, it's cubic feet, not necessarily square footage. And so that's a little bit of consideration as well as we make the comparison. But I guess I'll try to answer individual questions if there are any at this time.
I don't know that I have a question more than a statement. I was one of the people that met and talked with you and Rusty and
James.
And the spreadsheet was helpful. You know, the middle school project looked like it was about $21 a square foot for HVAC and controls, about $1.60 a square foot for just controls. The high school project equates to $25.43 and $1.90. Now, he did try to do some escalators for, you know, for inflation. As I told you after that, I'm not sure I buy into those, but they're close. And I think, you know, he then averaged them though, and I think that I'm not a big fan of that because it took the high school down to, or the middle school to $17.29 and the other to $12.75. But the reason it did that was because the high school's got such a large area that's controls only. It really skewed the numbers. But if you look at just the HVAC to the other, and then there are some other numbers that, you know, there's the high school's got a lot more space. That's gymnasium. I think it's almost a third more, and so that skews the numbers. They're pretty close. There is some inflation that would be in there. I don't know if it's as high as he says it was, but I was the one that made a big issue about this and asked for more information. I still have the same concerns I had about bidding, but as for this project, I'm comfortable going forward. And one of the things that got brought up too that you and I and Rusty discussed was that any future project is going to be on a much larger scale. We'd have to do engineering drawings and bid it out. And so this one being on the small scale, I'm comfortable going forward.
Are there any other individuals with questions or comments?
I would echo part of what Greg there said as well. That's the only thing I would like to see as well as far as in the future. And they did explain as far as how they did that, but I would like to see more of the formal bidding process as far as the other stuff on there as well.
Okay.
Just because I think that's the way we've done a lot of the other big projects, and I just think that's the way we need to go.
Well, I would move to approve the high school HVAC project as presented.
Been moved by Board Member Schwartz and seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the long-range facilities planning.
Okay. At the last meeting, and I kind of limited it to 30 minutes. If it's all right, I'll do the same today, and it's just because you can talk a very long time. I'll talk very quickly to allow for the for any discussion. I know. But I wanted to point out some things of transport. I'm going to go through real quickly the different buildings. You end up having transportation building. Really, it's in pretty good shape. There's not issues there that really would question that there's great need that exists there. You end up going to other buildings like the high school. The high school, I did put in red the HVAC system. You can see that because I knew that that's our priority, trying to work on career and tech. I had it down because it's something we're really trying to work on with some of the equipment and updating it. It's really a hard one to do, but we're looking at grant money. We're looking at some of our general fund or capital outlay. I mean, we're trying to figure out what we can do to better that area, update it if we can. But the other items, even on the outside, I put auditorium just because it's been a discussion item for a long time. You know, it's not in red. Softball field, that's been talked about. And you look at these other items, track, windows, roof, locks, all these things are things that need to have work on them in the next 15 to 20 years, okay? Nothing to say all this has to be done in 5 years, but 15, 20, yes, they do. Storm shelter, it's not even in red because, see, the high school has an identified storm shelter, the library. It was identified 40 years ago. Now it's in question as to, it's not in code necessarily today, but it's sure better than what Wilson has, okay? So that's why it wasn't identified as red with it. So transportation, high school, and this isn't new information, you recognize. These are things that have been identified prior to. I'm just doing it in a different way for you to look at them. The middle school, as these come up, again, the track needs work on. There's no question there. It's in bad shape, but I never put it in red. It probably should be. If I talk to someone else in the middle school, they'd say it should be probably bloody red. But the only thing I put in red was the cafeteria and kitchen. That really needs updated. It's too small. It's one of those items in that building that needs to be tended to, and trying to find the money to do that is challenging. Another item would be Washington. Washington, we've already addressed this, full programming. You know, they were full. They used the building, and now they're told that we have to end up going to full-day preschool in the next 3 years. And there's got to be a transition to have that happen. We don't want to cut it in half. We want the same number of students that's been attended to, and that's an issue. They don't have a storm shelter. They don't have accessibility. I mean, they have the most. I mean, of any building, this one, the sewer, you cannot appreciate it unless you're there. Sewer is a problem.
Did you want to address these one by one, or do you want to come back later?
I was trying to do a quick scan and then talk as a whole at the end, because it wasn't a matter of taking any building. Accessibility, I'll talk on that from the standpoint of, in any school, accessibility is a problem. If you can't, this building is a problem with accessibility. Lincoln is a problem with accessibility, and Washington is a problem with accessibility. And the problem that exists there is a matter of, when are we going to put money to that and take care of it? Well, part of that answer too is a matter of, do we want to? Do you want to put $500,000 into a 92-year-old building for accessibility? If you do, you have made a statement that you plan on using that building for quite a number of more years. I hope so, because you're not going to turn around 5 years later and then say, oh, we're going to destroy that building, not use it anymore. So that is a problem. It ends up being a real challenge. Storm shelter, I put it in red. Some people's view is different. They believe that we haven't been hit by a tornado, so we don't need a tornado shelter. You know, it's not a big issue. But I think across the state and in this particular region, it's very common. Actually, I don't think you even build a new building anymore without having a storm shelter that's really in place. Wilson ends up having a number of items that need to be tended to over time. I put small classrooms on the side because that's a given. I mean, it's probably the one building that has consistently small areas. But storm shelter is one that's just, it's red. There's nothing there that's really good for a storm shelter in that particular building. O'Laughlin. We end up having, again, storm shelter. We talked about the traffic. We talked a little bit about landlocked too. There is more land there if you look at a map than other elementaries have, but you must understand that because of the water drainage that exists, it really doesn't allow you full use of expanding that piece of property. It kind of kills any development on a good portion of that particular piece of land. So these are issues as well with this building. A lot of the consistency, if you look at these as far as ceilings, well, actually O'Laughlin may be the only one that had ceilings because there's some that don't have the lowered ceiling still in that particular building. I need a mouse is what I need. Rockwell. Rockwell's, I already said accessibility. The storm shelter is just this hallway out here. Parking, well, we know parking is an issue whenever we have plays or musicals. Parking is really a challenge in this area and has always been. And then one that I didn't put in red, but I did write it down, was just a matter of that expanding West Side. West Side's been here for 25 years, and in conversation, it's not a matter of the development or expanding West Side was based upon, oh, we don't want to consider more children if there's greater need. The issue is a matter as well, there's not space. You know, there's a limit that exists there, and we're usually at that limit. So it's not a matter of saying our facility here is wonderful for them, but in 25 years, I think there could definitely be a need for some expansion. And then the auditorium, I just want to mention that from the standpoint, the auditorium's been here for this community for many, many years. But it is the one auditorium that still is a question mark, a little bit like accessibility. How much money do we put into it when it's tied to something that we have more interest of walking away from than actually putting a lot more money into? So it becomes the one piece that's a little bit of a shining point, but at the same time, you can't end up walking away from everything else and just leave an auditorium. So it becomes a challenge. I mean, just saying it fits into this in a very challenging way when you look at this location, this piece of property.
Well, that has a lot of structural issues too, doesn't it?
It has some. Again, some that may be able to be tended to, but again, do we put the money into it? I think I almost have, which one? Did I do Lincoln? No. Lincoln's going to have some similarity to Washington because of accessibility. It ends up having as well sewer issues. Traffic is, then I know time ends up allowing people to manage. But isn't it amazing that it's a one-way on both sides of that building, and they're really parking, there's not, the parking lot is tiny, there's just not, and the storm shelter, it truly doesn't exist much at all there. Taking them to the basement is really not an adequate storm shelter. The last one, oh. Actually, Munger, we don't even think of Munger many times. But Munger, we are responsible for it, and we have the same kind of needs that exist there. There's a roof issue that we need to tend to, a storm shelter that's not there. I never put it in red, but definitely location and travel is an issue. I mean, we'd rather not have to end up driving to that particular location. It'd be nice if it was in Hayes. I think that's, oh, I didn't do Roosevelt. Roosevelt is having their birthday this week, and they are 50. So really kind of exciting to it's our youngest. So we have, when you end up trying to renovate, talked about gymnasium, but this is things that are not red because we're doing with that, we're working with it. But there's a number of things that need to be addressed as well. Storm shelter should be or could be in red as far as all these things. Now, I point those out, and it's supposed to get to this point, which is supposed to stimulate a little bit of discussion. And the stimulation is supposed to be looking at my thoughts as to what could be a plan if there was a building in town, because we have a hard time of building new, because building new can be $200–300 a square foot. But if you could find a building in town and you can renovate it and it can be less than $100, you know, a square foot, is that something that could be considered? If we found a building, is it possible to put Washington, Munger, the Learning Center, Helping Hands, all in that building? And could it be done in just a much cheaper fashion than building a new building for this? You'd be able to walk away from those great needs that exist at Washington. You'd be able to walk away. You'd be able to put Munger's children in with Washington, which makes sense. They're part of that program. Learning Center is the oldest students that we have, and it's really a virtual-like program. And Helping Hands is one classroom, you know, for the high school, 2 times a week, 3 times a week. So I think it's possible to find. The exciting thing of this is you can't buy new facility and get federal funds for it, but you can buy used and renovate and get federal funds. So the exciting part of this would be, that's another reason why this may make sense, is looking at Washington and Munger's program. It's a federal program with that we could perhaps get some money that we usually are not able to end up getting. Another possibility would be looking at, I had a second plan with this, repurpose building plan 2 and opening it. You would end up seeing that it's trying to redirect Rockwell into a building. Now, it's going to take more space. Actually, I was trying to figure square footage with Rusty's help and trying to figure out what could be needed there. But if it was possible, you could again possibly walk away from here. The biggest problem there would be a question of auditorium, you know, because you walk away from it and what you have the one location that's needed. You might even have to build a metal building, you know, for the shop for maintenance. You know, that may happen, but they can be constructed pretty reasonably as to putting it in place. And West Side might have some more room that they have the possibility of growing. Then my other thought to share with you, at least to stimulate a little bit of conversation, is three different plans for an elementary. Okay, if you're talking about having money, and of course we don't have money, that would have to be a bond. But for a bond and focusing on one elementary, perhaps the elementary could be big enough that it actually would be a 5-section building, that you could put both O'Laughlin and Lincoln in. And if you had O'Laughlin empty, you could possibly renovate it, make some changes if need be, and put the Learning Center, Washington, and Munger into O'Laughlin. I don't have any thought about Lincoln at this point, other than maybe someone else has ideas. But even with this, you'd still have federal funds for Washington and Munger, where O'Laughlin could probably get some money to renovate it. A second plan with it is putting Munger, Washington, and Lincoln into a new facility. Now, we have had in the past the early childhood program in the elementaries. There's good and bad with that, I know, but it could be done. It would be a bigger building, again, with that extra space there, but you would be able to then walk away from Munger. You'd be able to walk away from Washington. You'd be able to walk away from Lincoln. One building would be able to do that. It's a new building. Yeah, you wouldn't get any with this plan. And the last one that I have to share is.
Would those be grants? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
On the federal?
Federal grant that. Yeah. And the last one here. Last slide to show you is putting O'Laughlin and Lincoln together. It's kind of like the first plan, but instead of having, you end up having the Learning Center, West Side, Rockwell, maintenance all go to O'Laughlin. The thing that's good about it is you don't have traffic. I mean, nothing like an elementary. I mean, it's not going to be a traffic issue. There's space there. You could definitely put that in that location. You could expand West Side. You end up having a 5-section building, a larger building. You're able to, I mean, these are just thoughts from the standpoint of hoping to help you have discussion as to, did anything look interesting? Is there, and actually when you're looking at the monies that tie to this, I played with the monies, just the estimates. And the estimates of doing one elementary, and then the renovation that may tie to it, and then also maybe buying another building that's in the, in the community, and trying to, if you tried to do all of that, it's still going to be less than $40 million. It's going to be less than, it's going to be about half of what that other, our project before, and still tends to some of our greatest needs. I mean, it clearly tends to some of the greatest needs here. So I just did this, and I know there's, I took most of it, but we have 10 minutes or so of your thoughts. It's just to stimulate some discussion at this point as far as thinking of what could be done.
So I mentioned that federal grant for the early childhood degrees as you go. How much are we looking at? How much would that cover?
Well, I know that when they moved into Washington and used some money for prepping for them to come in, they got a grant for $150,000. And I don't know if, when I talked to Donna on that, she seemed optimistic, hopeful that could very well happen, or more. I mean, it's just a matter that we don't seem to have any way to get other money. It's always on us. It's kind of nice to end up seeing that there may be the possibility of pulling some money from somewhere else.
When was Wilson built?
Wilson is 68 years old?
58.
It's 58.
Oh, it's 58
what about
years
the middle
old.
School?
Okay.
What about the middle school?
60.
So from 58 to 68, we built 2 new elementaries and that middle school?
Seems as so.
progressive people back then.
Well, or it's just good times, you know, you're talking 50s, you know, good times in the 50s and early 60s, so.
Could be.
Yeah.
And maybe an increasing enrollment, I mean, you know, you had to know.
But again, this is the plan we had was 2 elementaries. This plan, 1 elementary. Now there's another building. I don't know if it's possible to find, you know, but if you could make that work, again, you could, by doing this, it's possible of taking away every building that needs an elevator, you know, that we don't have, you know, we're accessible then. We have that tended to. It really didn't address anything necessarily being done at the middle school or the high school, but as I understand it, we got to start somewhere. You know, there's a piece where if we can get something started, it really could make a big difference.
You talk about a $40 million price tag with various plans. This is maybe part of that discussion. That, you know, so this is saying, first get your price point that people will support, and then put your priorities to it. So you pick 40 million and saying, here's where our priorities are, but what is the number that people may support? And I attended at the KSB, somebody did one for $1 million and they got voted no. And they had failed 2 bonds altogether. You know. So it's very hard to say.
The answer to that still has to be, when the survey was done at an earlier time, it was closer to $10 per month per $150,000 home. The bond that was tried was 16, and this, I'm certain, would be closer to 10. You know, it could be more like $10, $11, $12 is what it could be, which is going to be more inviting to the public. Clearly, it wouldn't be 30-year. You know, it could be definitely, it may even be 15. A 15-year could maybe make that happen. But you know, it's a matter of taking it further to look at that and pull in those numbers to be sure what's a possibility.
In a couple of your plans, you got the auditoriums, like this one I'm looking at. Auditorium question, auditorium needed. So anything with Rockwell.
Yeah, I put that there.
That doesn't have that cost for that.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know what to do with it. It's one of those factors that's tough for me to try to figure out, because I know it serves a great function for us here, but since it's attached to this whole thing, how do you walk away from it when we don't have another one? You know, you have to have something else.
There's more than just us that use that facility.
Yeah.
To some extent.
It's safe to say the majority is most everything is elementaries, middle, yeah.
That's all dependent on the rest of the building though for heat, right?
Yeah.
It's all on one boiler.
Yeah.
So don't really want to run a circus tank. No.
Well, you can change the heating system. I mean, you could scrap the rest of it and then just arrange, but again, I would say that the value of this piece of property here is not the building, it's the land. And you're not going to leave probably one, I mean, you're probably going to want the whole piece of land. You know, whoever's coming, if someone wanted it, it'd be the whole piece of land, not with one little auditorium on the corner.
You'd still have the money you have to dump into it, and poor parking, and...
Well, you still have that problem, yes.
What I do like about so many of these plans is that, I'm going to pick on you for a second, there's no way you can look at those in 10 minutes and kind of whatever, because so much of them overlap, you know, I mean...
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you built an auditorium at the high school, you know, someday that was part of the project and was there, all of a sudden this building isn't looked at, and you can cut off, you can shave some of the other ones just by other changes, you know.
Well, I didn't intend necessarily for it to be puzzle pieces that come together, more thought provocation. You know, that's what the intent is. And I know we mentioned at the last meeting that a good part of this may result in us needing a special board meeting just for this, and really dedicate a couple hours just to talk on this.
I would appreciate that, because this is kind of like, these are all good ideas, but I would like to have more data, like if it is what we know is a piece of such will, we're okay with about $10, 150, but probably need to flesh that out more from what other house values are. So I think once we have a price, we know what people can afford, and priorities aren't really changing much. I see storm shelter, storm shelter, storm shelter.
You did follow it. This isn't new. This isn't new of me identifying our problems, and it's not new of me identifying what our priorities are. The priorities stayed the same as what the last work was. I mean, it's just a different kind of angle of what we might do. And again, I may be on the idea of a building out there. There are buildings in this town. The questions of matter is one that would work.
I think it might be beneficial to follow what Paul said, to take kind of the building by building approach at our next successive meeting to talk about each building, and then follow that up with your plans there, or any others that get identified throughout that process.
All right.
It sounds, unless there's somebody who gives a whole discount on storm shelter. Quite seriously, that's a common thread that you get coming up all the time.
Well, and I want you and I want the public to understand, storm shelters is premium dollar of construction. That's so.
Yeah, I'm driving some of the western Kansas communities. They've got community storm shelters. They have a height to it. That's not what it worse.
Actually, it works. It works better that ours are community shelters. You know, that's what works better. I'd rather in the future that whenever we can, we put a storm shelter in our school and then have it open to the public whenever they need it.
We never talked about that.
Well, that's the way it needs to be talked about. The police, the fire department, they need to have access to it whenever there is a chance of a tornado, and they have that facility open for them.
Yeah, but I don't think that's ever come up in a public conversation. And if you can, well, if we're coming together, I'd like more on the federal side. It's an interesting option for a problem that's pressing immediately for space. And that's we've got how much window to address it?
3 years.
Yeah, and actually, I was at the policy council today, and they are considering pushing it back on because of funding reasons, and not like, we're okay where we're at, the timeline might have to shift, you know, that's not uncommon.
So it buys us a little.
It might buy us a little bit of time, but I don't know that that means that there would be some motivation dollars we could tap into, just because again, like John said, when we renovated Washington for that purpose, there were some dollars that were assistance.
I think so.
Okay. We are in year one. I guess the update for the new accreditation is we are in year one. As in the school spotlights, you saw January 15th, which was an in-service day. Buildings led their staffs through a needs assessment and took some time looking at perception surveys. So we will bring back to you, the purpose of Goal 1 is to do a needs assessment, look at survey data, look at results, and then pick 2 goal areas. After this year, then we will create an action plan. In year 2, we'll use year 3 and 4 to monitor our progress and then look at our results in year 5. We have an outside visitation team. We meet with them in Salina at Smoky Hill. We have our next visit this Friday, and then we'll actually have our chair visit where we have to get our goals selected, and wrap up year one mid-April. So you'll be hearing more from us. We have a district leadership team tomorrow that's going to look at what the building leadership teams did. So there's that communication loop. But one of the things we said we would take one board meeting or work session a month to look at are the results. What our accreditation will be based on. Again, we're moving away from the reading and the math assessment, one score that dictates accreditation, and we're looking at a more general model and measures that actually look at the whole child. So last month we looked at kindergarten readiness. Today we're going to look at social and emotional growth, and these are just overview, just so you have a better idea of what social and emotional growth means when we talk about it. I feel like Hayes has been innovative in the social emotional area. The visit on Wednesday from Mr. Collier will really be to look at Westside and what we're doing, partnering with High Plains, because there is a mental health task force at the state level, and they're looking at a lot of things. So I feel like we have some good things going in the area of social emotional growth. It's great that as a state we're going to focus so that more resources can be pulled into it. We are advertising additional counseling, lots of different things already happening in the district. Our foundations team in each building, we're in year one of that. They will be in Hutch next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, doing more training to bring back to our staff. So there are a lot of things happening. I'm going to play this video though for you, again, just to better understand what we're talking about.
Hello, and welcome to the module on social emotional growth. Since the day the first schoolhouse was established in Kansas, the focus has been on teaching students reading, writing, and arithmetic, skills identified as being the most critical to a person's long-term success. Under the No Child Left Behind Act, enacted in 2001, that focus became even more laser sharp, as schools were measured by the number of students earning at least a proficient rating on standardized state assessment. Education became caught up in the practice of teaching to the test, at the expense of the students' needs, particularly the social-emotional needs of students. Addressing these needs has reached a critical point. Today, students experiencing poverty, chronic absenteeism, mental health disorders, and a lack of parent engagement have become the norm rather than the exception. Identified as a key outcome of the Kansas State Board of Education's Vision for Education, social-emotional learning is the process through which students and adults acquire the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, make responsible decisions. Research shows schools that incorporate social, emotional, and character development have more student engagement, decreased suspensions, and improved academic outcomes. In 2012, Kansas became the first state to develop and adopt social, emotional, and character development standards, also known as SECD. The standards provide schools a framework for integrating social emotional learning with character development so that students will learn, practice, and model essential personal life habits that contribute to academic, vocational, and personal success. The process of updating and revising these standards will occur in 2017 through 2018. Character development, personal skills development, and social development are separate strands within the standards and are interdependent upon each other. Within character development, the standards focus on core principles, responsible decision-making, and effective problem-solving. Within personal, focus on self-awareness and self-management. And under social development, the standards focus on developing social awareness and interpersonal skills. When the State Board of Education selected social emotional growth as a key outcome to its vision, it was very clear that this is to be measured locally by schools, not by the state. And the data collected should be used to inform decisions and instruction. So how do you measure social emotional growth? There are several types of data collection and school improvement processes that can be applied to this outcome. Let's start by identifying the types of data you could collect. Perception data, such as surveys. Process data, such as numbers served. Outcome data, what did you prove? Multiple measures, used when conducting assessments. Tiered approach. In Kansas, some districts utilize multi-tiered system of supports integrated framework as an implementation model, evidence-based curriculum. Regardless of the type of improvement effort, any curriculum and instructional strategies need to be evidence-based. Now let's take a look at the indicators that can be measured. Chances are, you may already be addressing many of these. Attitude and behavior, which is perception data collected through the Kansas Discipline Incident System, also known as the CANDIS system. Climate student management, such as measuring suspensions, expulsions, bullying incidents, as well as student, staff, family survey data. Attendance and program completion, which is data from the Kansas individual data on students. Bullying prevention, bullying data collected. Character development, perception data. School-based mental health, referral data. Volunteerism, service learning, number of students involved. Prevention data, prevention curriculum outcome data. The Kansas State Department of Education created a toolkit designed to help districts measure SECD locally. It contains the SECD fact sheet, Data 101 document, examples of the types SECD measurement, including the Communities That Care Depression Scale, examples of curriculum measurement, including Duckworth's GRIT, Safe and Civil Schools, Steps to Respect, Second Step, and the Kansas CAN competencies. Also included is a crosswalk between the SECD standards and the Kansas Education Systems Accreditation, or KESA, 4 Rs, and results. KSDE provides guidance and support for local implementation in many ways. High-quality professional learning with supporting resources and materials are produced and made available at low or no cost on several initiatives. One of these initiatives is the Kansas CAN Competency Framework, developed by the University of Kansas' Center for Research on Learning. This framework supports educators in systematically embedding interpersonal, and cognitive competencies into coursework. While academics are and will always be critical, data alone won't guarantee a student's success. Without skills such as the ability to persevere, communicate effectively, and take personal responsibility for behaviors and actions, students will struggle in their post-secondary pursuits. We're all familiar with the phrase, do as I say, not as I do. As educators, that's not good enough. We must be careful to model the behaviors we want our students to learn. Your school team can assess to what degree the Kansas SECD standards are incorporated into daily instruction and various school routines. School counselors, social workers, and school psychologists can also offer insights, unique skill sets, and resources. When educators nurture a student's intellectual, emotional, and civic potential, Kansas students are on a sure path to post-secondary success as socially engaged, career-equipped, lifelong learners. For more information on social-emotional growth, visit the KSDE website at www.ksde.org.
So again, that's one of the measures that we will be focusing on and writing a plan to help see an improvement and some growth in. As I watched that, it made me think again that a lot of good things are happening. Do you have any questions?
It's just going to change the student handbook in some ways, the high school, with the greater responsibility, putting more onus of behavior back to the students.
As our foundations team work and we make any building changes, there may be, I don't know if that would be a direct impact. We've had some great, I know, articles about some of the things that are happening, and I think it's important for the community to know why maybe some changes are made in different buildings with procedures. And a lot of it is to stress the positive and help with some of the behavior, which is the social emotional growth. So handbooks, that's something we'll look at as we start implementing some different things. I'm sure we want it to align.
Yeah, because I think the handbooks are more from an administrative perspective of management. But this seems to indicate that we want to shift responsibility for your actions back to student-centered responsibility for their own actions. So that's all the reason I'm asking. It seems like we're trying to have it grow quicker in a lot of ways. And the civic engagement is a piece of this.
It
So
is
service
actually,
learning.
and civic engagement will be a thing we
This is coming
separate.
up later, but it was great.
But it was brought in here, and to me, they do overlap, but civic engagement will be a focus for all schools, and it has actually become almost like a sixth measure that we'll all be looking at as a state and district.
So I'll wait for another episode.
Right. Well, and I will say April 5th, Fort Hayes, we are partnering with them. They did a law symposium last year, but the feedback from area schools were the focus on mental health. So they're holding a mental health symposium April 5th. So we've been working together to bring in some really good speakers. So that would be awesome for any of you if available to attend. There's certain sessions, our commissioner will be there, but put a plug in for that. That I think would be a very good thing.
I think I may have handed up postcards.
Okay, perfect. Okay. We didn't even plan that.
No, I was taking it to share.
That's all I have if no one has any other questions.
Very good. Thank you, Shanna. Okay. Next item, discussion by board members and agenda requests.
I do. Since the state had the ESSA approved, and don't give me an answer tonight, please. Save it for another meeting.
Okay.
But when that originally was proposed and at the federal level coming through, you said it was to attach money for specific items, particularly related to professional development or investment in kids to do competitions, whatever it may be. I only know the science side of it. But what's the status of that? Just finding out what the status is and what funds will we see that will allow us to do with the things that are promised once we got it approved at the state, or rather at the federal level. Though they didn't like Kansas, but they accepted it.
Yeah, I will give an update. I was at a curriculum meeting the day it was approved, so they just talked about what, we talk about this, the state focus are the measures of social, emotional, kindergarten readiness, that type of thing. But we will need to continue to show that academic progress with reading and math. That's a big part of the plan that we have to submit, but then the dollars are tied, and that's part of why we do that. So I will get more information now that it is approved and then report back.
Because it seems like they're, and Larry's really interested in that because when it was proposed and going through legislation that it was to move money that was tied to what to do. Just kind of lump it in and I want to be sure that we get, be sure that we're aware that we can get what we should.
Right. Well, and I'm not sure when the federal government approves the budget and all of that, that's part, the money part hasn't really been communicated down because there was a threat that Title II funds would go away about a year ago. So that will be interesting. We may need to wait for the budget at the federal level to develop a little more specific.
We'll see in a couple of weeks.
Right.
The business
shut
down.
So I will make sure that I bring that back.
Thank you.
Very good. Anybody else? Okay. Discussion by board members and agenda requests. He had another question, so I was just making sure on the education stuff. So I was just making sure. It's all good. Okay. So, I think we do have a couple of exec sessions. So, Bill, if I understand this right, I can make this motion twice. Is that right? Or two separate motions, but we can do them together. Okay.
The only downside is if you need extra time on the first motion, you're going to have to wait till you're done with the second executive session.
Okay. Do you foresee us needing a bunch of extra time on the first one, John?
The first one, there will not be extra time needed.
We'll roll the dice. Okay. So I will move that the Board of Education recess into executive session along with the board attorney and the superintendent to discuss matters relating to employer-employee negotiations.
And Tracy.
And Tracy, sorry, whether or not in consultation with the representatives or representatives of the public body or agency KSA 754319 B3 with the open session to resume in this, in this room at, how long would you say we need, John?
For the first one, 10 minutes.
Okay. At 9:10, and then we'll move the Board of Education to recess into exec session along with...
Well, I would vote on the first.
All right.
Except you're not going to recess back here. You're going to recess in the superintendent's office.
Yeah, 9. Yeah. Okay. So then I will amend that to recess, continue into the superintendent's office. So I will entertain a motion to approve the first one. Okay. Been moved by Board Member Schwartz, seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And then I will make a motion to move into executive session along with the board attorney and the superintendent to discuss preliminary discussions relating to acquisition of real property relating to KSA 754319B6. With the open session to resume in this room at, how long would you say that would take, John?
And Tracy.
Okay. And Tracy. Sorry. For the second piece.
Second piece is going to take 15 minutes.
Okay. So
And as part of your motion, you need to state when it'll start.
9:10. Start at 9:10, and we will resume back in this room at 9:25.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Shorts.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.